Moving about 175,000 tons of material per day. Of that, 35,000 tons per day of ore is delivered to the primary crusher and then processed in the concentrator. The 240-ton capacity haul trucks will dump ore directly into the new 60-inch primary crusher. The ore is crushed to about 6 inches in diameter and is conveyed by a 1 kilometer-long continuous overland conveyor to the coarse ore stockpile located behind the concentrator building.
You can see the fresh and reclaimed water tanks. We reclaim our water from the tailing pond, and our fresh water is secured from the Similkameen River. 61 megawatt BC hydro substation.
Everything inside the concentrator building is controlled by a state-of-the-art electronic system that allows the operator to monitor the whole milling process. From the central control room, the operator can see everything that's going on in the process, from crushing the ore to the final product. From the coarse ore stockpile, the ore is conveyed into the concentrator building and enters the 34-foot diameter SAG mill that is powered by two 8,500 horsepower motors. In the SAG mill, water is added with the ore and tumbled with 5-inch diameter steel balls to grind the rock to less than 2 inches in size. This product flows to a 12 by 28-foot vibrating screen that allows the ore that is less than a ½ inch in size to drop through the screen and be pumped to the two ball mills for further grinding. Ore that is greater than ½ inch travels across the screen and is conveyed to a pebble crusher, where it is crushed to approximately ½ inch in size and returned to the SAG mill for further processing. The two 24 by 40-foot ball mills, powered by four 8,500 horsepower motors, use 3.5-inch steel balls to grind the ore finer. The ball mill product is then pumped to cyclones, which separate the coarse material from the fine ore, with the coarse material reporting back to the ball mill. The water and fine ore, which is ground to about the size of salt mixture, flows to the rougher flotation circuit. The separation of the barren rock from the copper minerals is performed in the rougher flotation cells. Flotation cells have impellers that mix the ore and water mixture. Bubbles are created by adding air and small amounts of alcohol to the cells, and the copper minerals are coated with a collector that allows the copper minerals to stick to the bubbles in the flotation circuit and float to the surface. The mineral concentrate from the rougher flotation circuit contain about 5% copper. This concentrate is further treated in the regrind mill and cleaner flotation columns to produce a cleaner copper concentrate containing approximately 25% copper. The cleaner flotation concentrate, which contains the copper mineral that has been ground to the consistency of talcum powder, flows to the thickener where the solids settle to provide a mixture containing 50% solids. This thickened concentrate is then pumped to the filter press panels, where the moisture content is reduced to approximately 9% moisture. The final concentrate consists of copper minerals containing 25% copper and small amounts of gold and silver. At $4 copper, the copper concentrate is worth approximately $2,700 per ton. Copper Mountain is targeted to produce approximately 175,000 tons of concentrate per year. The final concentrate is trucked to the Port of Vancouver in 50-ton B-train units in preparation for shipping to Japan, where it will be refined and smelted into copper, gold, and silver metal.
Several large beds. Each one is the size of 2 basketball courts. They add silica sand, creating a layer cake of sand and copper concentrate. The silica sand is known as a flux. It will serve as a purifying agent as the concentrate is smelted. In the intense heat of the furnace, the silica sand melts to form a slag that absorbs the iron and other unwanted minerals. The slag floats up and the copper sinks. Its purity is now 60%. Then it's into a second furnace, where they up the copper content to 98%. Coming up, there's much more to the story of copper. With the copper now extracted from the ore, they pour the residue onto a heap. This molten slag flows down like lava from a volcano. As it cools, it becomes part of the landscape. Meanwhile, in the smelter, a crane delivers the fiery liquid copper into another furnace for further purification. Inside this furnace, the purity level increases from 98% to 99.4%. The molten copper flows out of the furnace and into rotating molds. The molds shape the copper into big rectangular slabs called anodes. The slabs will serve as positively charged electrodes in the electro-refining process that's still to come. That process will take the purity level up one last notch. The copper begins to cool in the molds. A sprayer douses them with water to speed the cooling process, and the copper hardens into the anode shape. A hydraulic cylinder pops them out of the molds. Then a carrier system retrieves them and takes them for a rinse. This gets rid of any traces of a non-stick substance applied to the molds earlier for easy release of the copper slabs. Hooks formed during the molding make it easy to rack up the slabs for shipment to a Texas refinery hundreds of miles away. At the refinery, the copper slabs shed any lingering impurities in this tank as an electrical current is applied. The current causes the copper to gravitate to thin starter sheets. The impurities fall to the bottom. The copper deposited on the starter sheets is 99.99% pure, the purity level required by wire manufacturers. They load it into a furnace that's essentially a tall shaft. Midway down, the pure copper melts and flows to the bottom of the furnace. From there, they transfer it to an insulated metal channel, which keeps it molten as it now travels into a vertical mold. This mold shapes it into rectangular forms known as copper cakes. Copper cakes are used for manufacturing things like copper sheeting and plumbing parts. Fresh from the mold, the copper cakes are roughly 20 feet long. A conveyor serves them up to a circular saw that slices them to lengths required by the customer. Stacked and labeled, this pure copper cake is now ready to ship to the manufacturer. They also process pure copper into rods, a form more suitable for manufacturing electrical wiring. Molten copper moves through an opening in a mold, and cooled by water, the copper forms a continuous rectangular bar. These grooved rollers will now take it from rectangular to round and reduce the diameter substantially. As the copper travels through the grooves, it becomes a 3/10 of an inch thick copper rod. The rod exits and the machine loops it into coils. They land neatly onto a steel spool. Machinery compresses the copper coil, squeezing it down so it will take up less space when it's transported. There's one last squeeze from an overhead press. And an employee ties the tightly coiled copper with extra strong plastic banding. From the Earth's crust to the factory floor, it's been quite a journey. Shipped to manufacturers, it will now be drawn into electrical wiring, and the future is sure to be high voltage.
Dames en heren, in verband met koperdiefstal is er geen treinverkeer mogelijk tussen Dieren en Arnhem en vice versa. Tussen Dieren en Arnhem heeft een stop- en snelbussen ingezet. Houdt u rekening met een extra reistijd van 30 tot 60 minuten.
Spoorbeheerder ProRail neemt de maatregelen tegen het toenemend aantal koperdiefstallen op en rond het spoor. Risicovolle plekken zijn inmiddels voorzien van hekken en op een aantal locaties zijn beveiligingscamera's geplaatst.
Volgend jaar zullen er op verschillende plaatsen langs het spoor struikelmatten worden geplaatst. De rubberen kegels moeten ervoor zorgen dat mensen de sporen niet oversteken waar dat niet mag. De matten werden getest in Waver. Daar liepen een pak minder mensen op.
Wie tegen contante betaling koper wil verkopen aan een metaalhandelaar, moet zich vanaf 1 januari legitimeren. Koperdieven kunnen daardoor gestolen koper niet meer onder een valse naam verhandelen.
Wat er verandert is dat per 1 januari 2013 dat bij de contante inkoop van koper niet alleen naam, adres en woonplaats die te worden geregistreerd, maar dat er ook een identiteitsbewijs zal moeten worden gevraagd aan degene die het koper aanbiedt. En dat daar het identiteitsnummer van moet worden overgeschreven en dient te worden bewaard in een register.